Hey team, welcome to the final segment of our Sheffield series where we break down Karlina's performance at the competition itself. For those of you who have been following our series so far, thank you for being with us. And for those of you who are new to the channel, new to powerlifting, and don't know what Sheffield is, basically Sheffield is an invitation-only powerlifting competition where world champions and some wild cards are invited to earn money by breaking world records. Breaking an individual world record in the squat, bench, and deadlift will earn them 5,000 British pounds, whilst this year, overall placing is done by how much the athlete has broken the total world record by at the end of the competition. Now, in all competition, but more so in a uniquely scored competition like this, the first thing that we like to establish is what exactly does success look like for the athlete, or in this situation, what does a successful SBD Sheffield meet look like for Karlina? So for Karlina, a successful meet would look like this: the squat world record, the total world record, and the deadlift world record, and let the overall placing be where it may. Essentially, these objectives are also in order of success rate probability or by ease. And having established these objectives, we are able to construct a strategy moving forward for the competition. The step-by-step strategy for Karlina for this competition goes as follows. Use the second attempt squat for the world record squat. Use the third attempt squat to build a total and include a chip for the world record total later on. Open our deadlift at the world record total, which then dictates the bench attempts depending on what squat she is able to register, which means there has to then be a significant improvement on her bench press, which all ended up looking along the lines of a 230 plus squat, a 127.5 to 130 bench, and a 240 or 242.5 kilo deadlift opener at most. The second attempt deadlift is then for pacing and placing in anticipation of missed third attempts from other lifters in chase of placing. Then the third attempt deadlift for the deadlift world record. So just for a bit of context, her best squat at the gym for this build up was 231 kilos 3 weeks out at roughly mid to low 77 kilo body weight, which gives us pretty good confidence that in terms of her top end, it will be around there, maybe a little bit more. Karlina was also lot number 1 for session 1, which means timing for weigh-in and refeed and warm-ups was pretty easy to plan around. And as far as warm-ups goes, pretty much by the fourth warm-up set on the squat, we knew it was going to be a pretty good day by how she's moving and her position and her execution. But I did even tell Jewel at the time, who was out back helping me handle Carl, was basically I can't get carried away. We have to make sure that we stick to the plan at this stage. The pacing that makes the most sense for us was pretty much 217.5 and then 226 for the world record and then 230.5 for again the bump in the total and the chip. Our last warm-ups for squats was pretty much 185 and then 205 and then opening at 217.5. Now our opener at 217.5 didn't seem to please the commentators on the live stream. They seem to have focused on that little bit of stick point in the middle. We weren't too fussed about that. That's just something that happens at this loads for Karlina. That's kind of like what her squats look like. So this did not discourage us whatsoever. How it felt, how it moved out of the hole, and the speed of it overall was pretty positive for us, so we were pretty much on track. The 226 second attempt was definitely better than her opener, not necessarily in terms of bar speed, but definitely in terms of how it felt from an execution standpoint, in terms of how sharp her line was. Everything was better between our reflection between the two of us. And also goal number 1 was achieved, which is locking in that squat world record and locking in 5,000 British pounds. Can't reiterate enough that this is probably the best the 226 has ever moved, or anything above 225 has ever moved for Karlina, which means that it is pacing us really, really well for our planned third attempt, which is 230.5. Again, that 0.5 is really important because we can't take the chip on the deadlift opener. We'll have to take that potentially on the third attempt deadlift, which means that like for us to chip the world record total, we're gonna have to take that chip on the squat. Now we obviously have that chip after the 226, but again, when we take this 230 plus jump, there has to be a chip that comes with it, so we can break the world record total with a deadlift opener that won't have a chip. If you were live, or even at the very edge of the live stream, you will see me lose my mind as she hits this 230.5 on her third attempt. Even out of the hole, I was already celebrating. I knew she had it, knew the line was good. She could feel it. You could see on her SBD Sheffield video package, you see her smile on the way up, because we knew, didn't even have to look at the lights, knew it was 3 whites, which keeps us in pace for the total and gives us plenty of breathing room for our bench attempt. Now, externally, for the most part, bench being like a smaller contributor of the total may be more boring to a lot of people, but for us, for this competition, this is probably the story of the meet for us and the story of the training block for us. For us to achieve the objectives that we set out at the beginning of the training block, we really, really needed significant improvement on the bench press, which means there has to be some sort of change on the bench press, namely optimizing her bench technique even more so this block. Now, for many years, I pretty much held back on trying to optimize her bench press because for the most part, she's shown the capacity to improve with her current or now previous bench technique. But in truth, in the last year or so, she's hit somewhat of a bench plateau. Now she's improved her bench execution, which meant she's hit more attempts and the bench has become more reliable for us this last year. But again, like in truth, it still was somewhat of a plateau in terms of kilos. And for the objectives we have for this comp, we're going to need a catalyst that will not only break this plateau, but also act as somewhat of a tool to unlock her bench and create a higher ceiling for her for the future. So 12 weeks prior to the comp, we decided to enact what would essentially be a moderate to high risk but high reward strategy. Now, previously, Karlina would have her grip at the middle finger on the rings with somewhat of an elbow tucked position. Another factor to our decision in changing Karlina's bench technique is the rule change that is elbow depth. Without going too deeply into elbow depth rule, coincidentally, a more tucked elbow position on the bench tends to make elbow depth look more suspect from the head ref standpoint. Now, as a response, a lot of athletes veered towards having their elbows in a more flared position, and Karlina wasn't an exception. Now, since she was leaning towards more of an elbow flared position for the past few months, the movement pattern was almost prepped to have her move her grip out to max grip, which she didn't previously have. So basically the technical adjustments that we made for this training block were as follows. Max grip, elbows flared out, and a higher touch point, and adapting what would essentially look like a high-tech bench. In training, her best bench session was 130 for 2 singles, but this was very early in the training block, and throughout the training block, the new techniques still showed signs of inconsistencies. The most consistent top-end bench she would hit in training would be 127, which I would consider a high percentage lift. Now, going back to the squat that she hit, the reason why I celebrated 230.5 so emphatically is that this means that with the chip, Karlina can hit a high percentage lift at 127.5 kilo bench on her third attempt and line herself up for a 242.5 kg deadlift opener at the world record total. To put simply, 230.5 squat pretty much damn near guaranteed her 5,000 British pounds with her world record total on her deadlift opener, which is exactly how this played out. Not only that, but with how this bench moved, the strategy also fulfilled its secondary purpose of unlocking Karlina's bench ceiling for future competitions. Now, with the subtotal locked in, the deadlift attempts were pretty much also locked in. 242.5 kgs was always going to be the opener for the world record total. No other number made sense. Going higher would be unnecessary risk. Going lower wouldn't move the needle in terms of both placing and, more importantly, locking in that 5,000 British pounds. Going into the meet, deadlift training was going pretty well up until the last session. She hit a reverse band deadlift of 262 kgs 4 weeks out, which up until this meet typically is an indicator that she would deadlift that in comp. We know this isn't normally the case for everyone else, but this is religiously the case for Karlina until this meet, that is. Her last heavy deadlift workout wasn't the most promising. She hit a 243 kg single on deadlift, which in theory was supposed to be a double and give us an opener range. But apart from that last heavy deadlift workout, deadlift training mostly went okay. We know there were talks in preview podcasts of her deadlift training having halted for almost a month, but those were all untrue. People who would not know anything about Karlina's training literally just making things up for whatever reason. Anyway, as the deadlift session starts to unfold, you'll see her hit her opener at 242.5, where I actually start seeing hints of trouble. She actually initially gets two whites, but the head referee corrected the announcer and said that she had just mispressed the button and had meant to press white as well. So we didn't read too much into that. But the bar speed was obvious. It obviously wasn't as fast as we would like it to be, although it rarely ever is. Now remember, the second attempt deadlift in terms of objectives was always going to be for pacing and placing. The 252.5 kg attempt was selected for both those reasons, irrespective of the speed of the first attempt. Other schools of thought may see the opener and think that 252.5 kg jump would be unwise, but at this level of competition, you don't sacrifice the competition for the sake of attempt selection accuracy and stats. Besides, 242.5 kg opener already secured us the world record total and the 5,000 British pounds, and everything after that was just icing on the cake. The fact of the matter is that 252.5 kgs was the only number that would move the needle in terms of placing, which is exactly how this plays out. The second attempt number was selected in anticipation that if Karlina makes it, she would put others in a position to have to overreach their third attempt deadlifts, which in this competition was anywhere around 10 plus kilo jumps, and maintain her fifth position placing with only Sonita and Brittany left to deadlift after her that may affect standings. Now, things didn't go exactly as planned because Karlina missed her second attempt deadlift at the top on grip. Now, I know what you're thinking. See, that 10 kilo jump was way too much given how the opener moved. But keep in mind that while it may have looked like a strength issue for everyone else, between Karlina and I, it was merely a grip issue, which can be corrected. And now she has another attempt at 252.5. Now, this doesn't mean we were planning to have two attempts at her second attempt by any means. It just played out that way given the grip issue. But what ends up happening on the third attempt deadlifts is that we get to watch everyone else in front of us start missing their third attempts, which made making 252.5 kg deadlift on Karlina's third attempt more and more valuable, literally taking Karlina from 11th place to 5th place at the time. Now, before moving forward, I do want to give a special shout out to Amanda, who lent Karlina her liquid chalk for Karlina's third deadlift, which definitely helped, especially given the troubles we had with how slippery the bar felt. I know it sounds like excuses, but it really isn't. It's just one of those variables that we learn to control for future competitions, and that is, again, like Amanda in her experience brings her own liquid chalk. You can probably expect Karlina to do that for herself in the future as well. Now, as you can see, Karlina's third attempt definitely moved better than her second in terms of speed, without also the bar trying to slip away from her hands. And Karlina then jumped 6 places from 11th to 5th. Now, we did have to watch Sonita and Brittany pull ahead of her, but at this stage, our only regret really is that not having moved the 252.5 kgs the same way on her second attempt, that would unlock us to attempt the deadlift world record on her third. So, to conclude, Karlina's SBD Sheffield competition is definitely a success for us. Karlina finished 7th place. We were able to complete most of our objectives: a world record squat, a world record total of 610.5, and competition earning total of 11,750 British pounds, which is roughly a little bit more than double that in New Zealand dollars.